I'm delighted to welcome Davie Philip, who is very involved with ECOLISE, which is the European sort of meta-network of networks of organisation that are working for community-led change. Davie has been working in Ireland for the past, well, Davie can tell us himself, 20 years or more, I think. And he runs an organisation called Cultivate, and he set up the first eco-village in Ireland, Cloughjordan. But I will hand over to Davie and let him tell us more himself and introduce ECOLISE's Communities for Future.
Okay, thanks, Philip. Thanks, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you. You can just make sure you can hear me and see my slides, okay?
Good.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Davie Philip. I founded a cooperative in the year 2000 called the Sustainable Ireland Cooperative, and all the work I do in this field is through that. And for the last 5 years, I've been a co-president of ECOLISE, the European Network of Community-Led Initiatives for Climate Action and Sustainability, which you are members of. So I wanted to look at looking at the sort of themes of the need to strengthen community resilience, engaging citizens in the transition we have to make, but at the same time introducing the Communities for Future from ECOLISE. So ECOLISE is now 4 or 5 years old, as I say, a meta network to try and get more enabling and connection across the different disparate initiatives across Europe. It releases publications, hosts events, and now has 46 member networks and over 10 staff. And as Katerina was saying, I think one of the strengths is working together to look at how we get funding and support to our own network. So we're working on the Life Emerge, a life bid, which builds on what we're all doing in different areas of support that we can draw down to our local areas and our national networks. So we have staff in communications and policy and knowledge and learning and network and research with a lot going on from our movements and enabling them. One of the big flagships is the European Day of Sustainable Communities, which this is the first event of this year's Sustainable European Day. Over the next 2 weeks, there'll be events and all sorts of things going on. At the end of the month, launching Communities for Future, which is ECOLISE's new action program for the mainstreaming of the regenerative and transformative community-led action that we're all involved in. So just to tell you a little bit more about my work in Ireland. So yes, for the last 26 years, I've lived in Ireland. I am Scottish. I came here to study anthropology, got into sustainability in the 90s, and have been involved in quite a number of things around sustainability in Ireland, the emergence of transition towns in Ireland before it moved to .NES, and many different national and local things. So through the Sustainable Ireland Cooperative, we look to accelerate the transition to a sustainable and low carbon, a resilient and low carbon Ireland. So engaging citizens in the community-led transition is one of the things that we really focus on through dialogue, conversations, enabling and nurturing communities of practice, digitization and platform cooperatives and way to aggregate our work, regional community wealth building, transformative social innovation, and really framed around regeneration and resilience, especially community resilience. I was involved in a community of practice based in Scotland with Carnegie around exploring how we frame community resilience in the context now of the climate breakdown, of the ecological emergency and the pandemic, with the cascades of challenges, economic and social, mental health challenges that we have with the pandemic. We really need to strengthen our community's ability to respond, to cope with what's emerging. And I love this Margaret Wheatley quote that whatever the problem, community is the answer. And what I want to look at today is just how we strengthen community resilience in this context of a time where we're really very vulnerable to long supply chains, to dependence on fossil fuels, to the emergent ecological catastrophe that's unfolding all around us now. The top 3 headlines in our newspapers will be, floods, fires, droughts. And this picture here behind these words was taken just a year ago, where it snowed for a day in Ireland, and the supply chains for bread and basics were disrupted, and supermarket shelves were empty, and there was panic buying. So I think the ability to be able to cope and respond to that is what we have to nurture in our communities. So I want to give you a sort of case study in that through an example of what I've spent most of my time in Ireland doing. I was one of the founders of Cloughjordan Ecovillage. We're now 20 years old. We're 10 years in on site. And so I just want to give you a few slides. It gives us some sort of context in this, where that I can't see a clock, and I want to say quite a lot. So Cloughjordan Ecovillage is a great example of what we call an ecosystem of innovation. There's a lot going on. It was initiated by Sustainable Projects Ireland, an educational charity, but it's a community-led initiative to build community. Although we call ourselves an eco-village, we're really an eco-neighbourhood of an very established village. Cloughjordan means Stone of Jordan. And we're modelling the transition to a resilient low-carbon society by demonstrating and exploring how we do more for ourselves. And at the heart of that is belonging, a sense of place, nurturing that pride of place. John O'Donoghue, the Irish philosopher, says that the hunger to belong is at the heart of our nature, and cut off from others, we atrophy, we turn into ourselves. And we know the importance now to reconnect with our communities, to reconnect with our place, to reconnect with nature. As well as that, though, prototyping the sort of organizational changes that we require. So you've discussed sociocracy and different approaches to governing and making decisions, and how we communicate. I think this is so important now in our established communities and our regions, that we have the ability organizationally, and especially now, networking and seeing our different organizations and businesses and entities in ecosystems, that the connections and relationships aren't about competition, they're about collaboration, and they're about building community wealth or sharing the results or increasing the impact together. So Cloughjordan has this many initiatives in quite a small area, not just in the Ecovillage now, but the whole Cloughjordan, but examples of high performance houses, now 55 houses in the Ecovillage. We're going to plan 130, moving from individual ownership to community ownership, more co-housing. We have a large enterprise centre, a community supported farm, car clubs, all sorts of businesses, all sorts of learning providers in this progressive and dynamic ecosystem. But we have a very progressive president, I'm sure you've heard, in Ireland, Michael D. Higgins. He's been with us twice. His last time, I think it was a couple of years ago, is worth looking at on the internet, because it's a fantastic, rousing speech. But at the end of it, he says, Cloughjordan, where the vision of sustainable living has clearly been put into practice, brings to mind the Irish saying, great achievements only come through cooperation. And I think that as we build resilience in all communities, at the heart of it is a new sense of cooperation, a new ability to cooperate, new ways and tools like platform cooperatives that can help us and enable us, even as multi-stakeholders, as different businesses, to work together for more impact. And we can do this in a number of areas. In food, we now see the move to organics, people having healthy diets, but food's a convivial act. We eat together, we eat often, and we can use that as a form of celebration and community building. But I'm really interested in how we come together and grow, produce, and distribute food in a different way. Models like community supported agriculture, where the producers are linked and are in different relationships to the consumers. A subscription basis where the citizens subscribe to every week or upfront, and then we can pay, in our case, 2 farmers and a whole European team of volunteers from the European Solidarity Corps that spend a year with us. But there's also in our ecosystem in Cloughjordan many other food providers. What they have in common is they have a subscription basis. So we have an egg club, a milk club, a mushroom club, and a bread club from the award-winning Riot Rye Bakehouse and Bakery. So they are community supported. Before Joe the baker bakes on Monday morning on his sourdough oven, his wood-fired oven and his sourdough breads, he knows he sold 100 loaves. He's got that guaranteed cash flow and he's supported by the community. So more community engagement, community supporting of the local food economy is fantastic. And food co-ops have been doing that for a long time now, new food hubs. And the exciting thing that we've just introduced into Ireland in the last month and just getting going is the Open Food Network, a community-owned platform that allows the producers to show what they have and the consumers in a virtual marketplace that enables not just local food economies, but when you add craft and other essential local items, local economies. So the same with energy, and I know that you're probably further ahead than Ireland in community-owned energy, but energy now, this is our district heating system. So our Ecovillage is a large district heating system, renewable energy and community-owned. But we've got a couple of examples locally of community-owned wind and the rooftop revolution, where communities, community buildings can have solar panels on them and drawing down vital income for the community as well as energy security. Let me just end, could keep going further in new approaches of communities doing more for themselves around mobility, around housing, but let's look at enterprise, because I think it's really important. The anxiety of the future is what are we going to do for work? Work has been rethought for us with digitization and automation. How do we really root enterprise in our local communities? Well, we have a large enterprise and innovation center. It's like a living lab where we actually work. ECOLISE has a desk here. Iva Pocock, the communications officer, works from here. We have connections to other European projects. We have a Fab Lab, which is an amazing innovation that would allow us to make virtually anything locally and share the plans and the blueprints globally through the internet. We have a food hub now, which is powered by Open Food Network, and we're getting a virtual marketplace that the WeCreate Centre will be a hub of, giving us a real driver of our economy. And then what we're really getting into now is remote dialogue and remote learning, blended rather than just in the Zoom environment. So we're making our innovation space into almost a TV studio where we can have the panelists and the speakers of events in our studio and distributed out to other areas with small pockets of people working. So co-working, we see in the cities, we have a co-working space in the enterprise center, allowing people a bit more cohesion and synergy, working in different things. And this idea of Fab Labs, a set of tools where we can prototype, we could upcycle, we could repair, and we could make almost everything working in a different way. But this idea of social innovation, transformative social innovation, the sort of things that community-supported agriculture, co-housing, community farms, community gardens, all of these things are examples of community innovation. And this is what we need to bring together across Europe. And the new program, Communities for Future, will be focused on citizen engagement at this local, regional, and municipal level, and helping to build resilience, revive our economies, and reimagine the systems that we depend on from a bottom-up, community-led, cooperative, commons-orientated way. So it builds on the experience that we're all doing already. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel. The Communities for Future is ECOLISE in a public-facing way, and it brings together the work that's been done in this regenerative culture for decades now through the movements that you represent there. So the idea of sharing stories that we had heard from Paul, really we need to inspire, we need to change the narrative, resources to help us work with the community, and for us to be developing and sharing the resources locally across Europe. events, virtual, blended and physical, where we can meet each other, online spaces where we can collaborate around funding. Right now I'm in a number of Erasmus education projects with other ECOLISE members, so we've been enabled to collaborate for that support. And contacts of people and organizations like yourselves that can support communities as they make this transition, as they strengthen their resilience to cope, as they break through into a different way of doing things that's community-led, and it brings value and wealth to our local places, allowing us to thrive, not just survive in these uncertain times. So hopefully I'm not too much out of time, and there's some space for any questions. I'm going to start sharing my screen so I can see the chat if there's any questions in there, and Philip can share these slides with you if there's anything of value in them. They're mostly pictures. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much, Davie. This was incredible, very interesting. I think I can say for everyone that we all learned a lot. So again, thank you so much for accepting our invitation, coming today to share your own experience, your expertise, and the future plans that you are conjuring right now. So as Davie said, if anyone have any questions right now, just pop them in the chat box, raise your hand. We still have a few minutes before going into the breakout room, so let's enjoy this time now for any questions you have for Davie, and then we will.
If they're not, they don't have to be questions. If there's anything I said that resonates or any insights, COVID restrictions. I think when you have stronger communities, Anna, I think the COVID restrictions don't have the same impact. We know that we work on a community farm together, so some of the restrictions around meeting, we could still properly distance work on our farm together, or in the distribution of the farm in COVID times became a social meeting point as we distantly queued to go into our distribution and pick up our vegetables. So I think you can thrive with these constraints. I think it's an opportunity. There's a silver lining in this for our movements, for people to recognize how important their local places are, and that they should probably engage in them a little more, or their ability to work now locally. Can we tell you a bit more of the Fab Lab, a fabrication lab, a digital fabrication lab, and from our purposes, how digital fabrication can be used to progress sustainable communities. So again, sharing blueprints, usually open source blueprints, drawing them into the Fab Lab, into a machine. So we could say, we got blueprints recently here for beehives or beehives. We put it into a router, and the router cuts it out like a flat packed IKEA beehive, that sort of thing. But Farm Hack and other sort of trends sort of use these workshops to be able to progress farming in a different way, or address a challenge different farmers have.
Rosemary had a question about funding.
How was it all funded? Well, it's complex. There's a million projects there, sometimes funded by Leader, but I presume you mean the Ecovillage. The Ecovillage was self-funded. We did a loan stock, raised €500,000 between 35 people in small loans from friends and family. We went to an ethical bank, borrowed another $500,000, bought an estate, or the land, 67 acres, for $1 million, leveraged that into a site that was worth, with zoning for sustainable development and planning for 130 homes, almost $4.5 million, and borrowed $4 million to put the infrastructure in. Our financial model was, because we're a not-for-profit, was to sell 130 sites at the money that we used to develop the estate. Of course, 2008 got in the way, and we've been potentially struggling and trying to rethink ourselves since 2008. We're currently 55 houses, about 110 members, but generally we've had no government funding. Just so Rosemary, just you know, there was different ways to crowdsource and borrowings, I suppose, borrowings from ourselves and borrowings from institutions. I'll probably run out of time, but I'll answer a few more questions if you're if there's time. Joanna, is there time? Will I answer one more question?
Still got a few minutes, Davie.
think that, so was there any other questions? I just see Rosemary's there, so just get started.
There's a question about how learning and education works in the community.
Well, the educational charity that started the Ecovillage with the intention it would be a destination. So there's probably about 8 learning providers, and the Ecovillage company has its own learning program. Cultivate, my company, has a learning program. The Fab Lab has a learning program. The farm has a learning program and a social farming program. So again, you see this ecosystem approach where we can have more impact by aggregating the impact of each entity through different things. So we really wanted to always, initially our ideas were that we'd have more impact in getting more momentum on sustainability if there was a place people could come and see the systems at work or the different physical things, and then go back to their own community with an idea for a community innovation or a physical thing or higher performance homes or renewable energy, or, you know, so all of that thing is I suppose to show it in action, to show it in practice. But also we've got space to really explore issues that we're struggling with. So we frame our work sometimes as we're a learning community, and we're inviting you to come into our learning while you're here. So even our permaculture course, which use some challenges that we have in our own learning, to sort of build the knowledge for all communities. Anyway, I'm way over time now, I'm sure, Philip.
No, we've still got a couple of minutes before we go into
Great, so I'm happy to answer anything else.
There's a question about single-use plastic, and there's a question about whether the Fab Lab can
yeah. It's a bugbear of mine. I hate this. Even our Greens now are introducing a single-use plastic deposit scheme. It just locks us into it. Let's go upstream and get rid of it. And in the Fab Lab, yes, the 3D printers are using plastic. There's now little devices where you can use the recyclable plastic. You could shred it and make it into new filament that goes into the 3D printers. We can make plastic out of plants, or, you know, there's obviously concerns and challenges there. But yes, recycling plastic is a bugbear of mine. Let's stop producing this stuff and working out ways to not have to use it.
And there's maybe one more question from Johanna about how many of you started the idea. I assume that's Cloughjordan.
Okay, that's a good question for this sort of topic of engagement. So a very small group, 5 or 6 of us. We met in Dublin Food Co-op, so maybe half of us were cooperators into cooperatives. Another half of us were activists, wanting to be pro-activists, coming out of road protests, GM protests, want to be proactive. A few anthropologists thrown in there with some ideas around sustainability. And so that small group, the first thing we did was constitute, launch. Every month we held a presentation to invite more people to join for a year. Then we started to, as we were doing that, we were looking at how we would co-design. And then after 2 years, we started looking for land. So there was an engagement, drawing people in, regular sort of discussions, conversations on the topics, starting to work with permaculturists and eco-architects to do co-design. So we start with a small group, you know, never overestimate the power of a small group.
I'll just have a few remarks to make at the end, but I just want to invite Davie just to make any sort of closing reflections that he has following this afternoon. Davie, are you still with us?
Okay, yeah, can you hear me, Philip?
Yep.
Okay, well, maybe just what I've learned from joining you in your event today, which I've really enjoyed. It's been really good to hear what you're all doing. I've heard some amazing things and some amazing people. I've learned that SCCAN's very cosmopolitan. There's lots of dialects I've heard today, not all Scottish, but I like that cosmo-local framing, that we can root our work locally, but we can engage globally through communities of practice. So there's something, the need to build community at all levels. And I think we can learn together, we can add value together, we can support each other, we can bust silos, and we can act more like ecosystems. And I think that's why all of our different projects, all of our different pet subjects and topics are connected somehow in deeper values more intrinsic values. And we need to encourage and enable our local places then to strengthen their resilience, to create meaningful work and livelihoods in this transition that we have to make. So I think that we're in a pivotal moment. COVID gives us an opportunity. We need a just recovery and a just transition. And at the core of that is our communities and our community action and our ability to localize and not just shorten supply chains, but to create food webs and resource webs in our regions. That we start to think about community wealth building from a regional point of view and ensure that our places can thrive. And to do that, we can do that together through our shared action program, Communities for Future, that ECOLISE is launching this month. So do tap into the many events that are in the European Day for Sustainable Communities, which is actually a fortnight, and ending at the end of the month with a policy workshop in Brussels, launching officially this action program, where we can come together, find partners, learn, communicate, deepen our knowledge, get resources, not reinvent the wheel, bust those silos that will allow us to together move from this ecosystem worldview to an ecosystem worldview, where we can see the benefits of the connections, the relationships, the interactions, the communities that we build to sustain ourselves into this very uncertain future. So thanks for letting me be here today. Look out for Community Future. It's your platform and you can engage with it. And I look forward to working with you over there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Davie. So yeah, as Davie says, I think we'd all agree we are at a pivotal moment with the whole COVID-19 crisis, and the opportunity this now gives us to rethink the future. And I think being part of, knowing that we're part of a much wider movement is something which can energize us all. I just want to close by thank you to you all for coming along this afternoon. Thanks all to all the volunteers that make SCCAN work, and thanks to all our sessional workers who contribute such a huge amount. And just to say that, yeah, as we've mentioned before, that the survey was very well responded to, and there's a huge amount of information in there which we will be analysing and follow up on to help prioritise future activities. But it also highlights what a range of skills and experience there is across the network. And one of the key things we're looking to do is to enable more sharing of skills and learning across everybody who's part of the network. So part of what we're trying to do is to create the platform where that can happen. And one of the other key things is around changing the narrative. For that, we need lots and lots of better stories. So please do share your stories with Paul. Please do sign up for training in getting better at telling your own stories. And also we need to model different ways of working together, and local democracy and citizens' assemblies have been mentioned. One of the projects I'm most excited about at the moment is that we are developing a community practice for people skilled in facilitating deliberative processes, who will then be a resource and pool for local peoples and citizens' assemblies. So there's lots going on. Please do stay involved, and hope to see you again soon.